Good morning, or good afternoon, and a warm welcome to all. You've joined the first technical training session for Module 4, Managing Website Projects, in which you'll learn what you need to get started with a website project, including easy-to-follow, step-by-step processes that help with checklists and helpful guides for goal setting, project phases, and team building, even if you are a staff of one. This is the fourth module of the Digital Empowerment Project, a nationwide initiative organized by the 6 U.S. regional museum associations that is dedicated to providing free, self-paced training resources for small museums. This inaugural series of online trainings and resource toolkits focused on digital media and technology topics is made possible by funding from the Institute of Museum and Library Services. My name is Zinnia Willits, and I am the Executive Director of the Southeastern Museums Conference. My pronouns are she, her. I'm a light-skinned white female with shoulder-length reddish-brown hair. I'm wearing black rimmed glasses that are often referred to as cat-eye style. Today, I'm wearing a plum-colored sleeveless top, and I'm sitting in front of a backdrop of my home office, which consists of a desk and a few computers behind me. As the host for today's session, I would like to convey just a few things to our attendees before we begin the program. First, in this era of virtual meetings, when digital spaces may substitute our physical sense of place, it is important to reflect on the land we occupy and honor the Indigenous people who have called it home. Today, I am back home and speaking to you from Charleston, South Carolina, the historical homelands of the Natchez-Cusco peoples. Wherever we are, let us acknowledge all Indigenous nations as living communities, their elders, both past and present, as well as future generations. We, the Digital Empowerment Project team, recognize that our organizations and those of our members were founded within a colonizing society that perpetuated the exclusions and erasures of many Native peoples throughout the United States and beyond. We ask you to reflect on the place where you reside and work, and to respect the diversity of cultures and experiences that form the richness of our world and our profession. Thank you. Now it is my pleasure to introduce today's presenter, Despy Mays. Despy is the founder and lead strategist of Bluebird, a marketing consultancy focused on serving solopreneurs, startups, and nonprofits. Her marketing career has spanned nearly 2 decades and crisscrossed through nonprofits, consumer brands, agencies, and the startup world. She has led digital marketing and interactive technology projects in collaboration with museums, ranging from the Terre Haute Children's Museum to the Musée du Louvre, plus many corporate clients from local farms to Fortune 500 companies. I have enjoyed getting to know Despy and am thankful for the time she has devoted to this session. Now I am pleased to turn the floor over to you, Despy, to begin our session.
Thank you, Zinnia. It's awesome to be here. I'm really excited to share this content with you and to have a chance to answer your questions both now and in the forum, as she mentioned. So I'm just going to jump right in. I know time is short, so we're going to get right in there so we can get to the content everybody is here to see. Okay, so as Zinnia mentioned, my career and working in tech and marketing and the museum space has kind of taken me all over the place. And as we were preparing for this workshop today, one of the organizers really challenged me to think about the needs of smaller teams of solopreneurs, which those of you who are out there running museums as a solo staff person, you're definitely a solopreneur in my estimation, and really think about how I could present this content to you from that lens, since so many of the folks who are participating in these workshops are coming from that angle. So I wanted to start this presentation by giving you a little inspirational boost from that point of view. So the first step, there's a few steps we'll talk through today of planning your website project, is truly to believe that you can do it. And As I was talking with her about what I was going to present today, I was thinking about all of the folks I've worked with to build websites, who has had the biggest challenge, the smallest teams, and there are a couple of local farmers that came to mind because local food is something that's really important to me personally. So anytime I have an opportunity to build technology for somebody who's out there trying to grow our food, I am excited to work with them to do that. But it's a big challenge if you're a farmer and you're trying to build a website because from dawn until dusk, you're doing this. Or some variation of this activity, which is not really conducive to project planning and writing content and figuring out what your payment processor is going to be, or all of the little things that make up a website project. So there are creative ways for people who have lots of other stuff going on to pull together people who are interested in supporting you in order to make these technology projects happen, even if you're not available from sunrise until sunset. So believe you can do it, because it is possible, and there are a lot of ways to make it happen. There's not just one way. So today we're going to talk through all those different ways and how you can get creative in building a team, putting together a project plan, and setting yourself up for success by thinking through some of the obstacles you're going to encounter from the beginning. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is building a team. And even if you are a staff of one, you probably can't do it alone. I put that probably in there because if somebody told me I couldn't do it alone, I'd be tempted to just to prove them wrong. So if you're like me, that probably is giving you some room to accept help. So any team that you're putting together to build a website or to redesign a website or to add on to a website, consider these 4 functions. Often, as the person who is the leader of an organization, or the person who's doing the organizing, you find yourself in the project manager role. And that role is arguably the most important piece of the team because it keeps everybody else moving. And you might decide that's not the best role for you. Maybe you fit into one of these other categories better. But it's really important for the project manager to care deeply about the outcome of this project and be willing week after week to solve the problems, keep an eye on what's happening, kind of live with it as top of mind. The content manager is somebody who's going to go out, loves to do research, is going to find things, is a good writer, is going to help you edit. That person is the information person. The creative lead is somebody who's going to help you resize images or create graphics, possibly even design your website. It really depends on the scope of the project as to exactly what the duties of each of these roles might be. But you just want to be thinking about the function. Who's the creative person who's going to help bring this to life? And then, of course, the technical lead. I feel like this role is the one that often causes the most anxiety if it's not something that you yourself are comfortable taking on, because you have to find that person. You feel like you might not have the vocabulary or the experience to talk to them in their language. So this person really is responsible for setting up everything from your hosting account to migrating content into the built website, helping you figure out how to use it after it launches and all of that. So in order to help you actually turn this into an actionable kind of request of somebody, I created some job descriptions. And I heard that these resources are available to you. They went out via email today if you're registered, and they'll also be available on the museum hub as well. So these job descriptions are intended to be a place to start. With each one of them, it gives you a detailed overview of what this position should do, and you can customize it to your specific project, so that as you're out there looking for people to help you, you have something you can share that's kind of specific about what you need each person to do. So the next question, of course, is where are you going to find these people? And I'm sure you have a sense already of where you might look. I think a lot of us would look to a group of volunteers, and often volunteers are best suited to help with content because they've been involved with your organization for a long time. They know it. They might have helped you already with archival projects or digitization projects or things like that. So content is the best place to start, often with volunteers, but you might get lucky and have a really amazing design resource or a really amazing technical resource that could serve you really well. I think interns are really excellent for well-defined content roles, sometimes graphic design help, and sometimes technical work, especially content migration. So when you're ready to take that content that you've gathered and copy it into a website, that's a really excellent intern project. But the thing about interns I've encountered is that the projects need to be really specific and pretty easily turned into a checklist of things to do. I have been a part of projects where, an intern is assigned to build a technical project, and they might have a little bit of experience doing that, but they struggle through the problems and challenges. And if the project that they've been given is broad, they might not know how to overcome those obstacles. So well-defined roles, more successful there. And then the next two are interesting things. I'm in Indianapolis, and I have worked with a really great university program from Ball State University, a group of students that are doing semi-professional work at really, really affordable rates so that they get professional experience and build their portfolios prior to graduation. And the organizations that work with them get really great technology, I think better than if you hired a freelance college student kind of without the support of those programs. So if you're in or around college or university, and even now with as comfortable as everyone is working on Zoom, it's a great opportunity to kind of hunt for those programs and reach out and use those resources to really stretch any budget that you can allocate. The same is true for nonprofit career development programs. There are at least 3 here in Indianapolis that I have worked with in different capacities, and they sometimes are transitions to tech, so people learning to code, or people doing graphic design work, lots of different types of those career training programs. So look and see what's available in your community. And again, if you are, feeling like you want to extend beyond that, or you can't find the resources you need in your own community, look in your region and see what's available to you, because you can get really great resources that way, much more affordably than the last option, which is, I think next to volunteers and interns, probably the thing that we think of most often, right, is actually hiring out this type of work. And as I'm sure you're all aware, the cost of doing that ranges dramatically from the single individual freelance resource to a full-on agency that might charge, 5 or 6 figures for a technical project. So lots of options. It depends on what you're trying to accomplish, how technical is it, and how much, really specialist kind of skill do you need. Most of the time, most web projects, I think that you can build a really functional team with those first 4 options. And, you know, if you have the luxury of a budget that allows you to hire out parts, I would say that design and technical implementation are the parts that really you get the most value for sending to a paid resource. All right. One small note about free help. So, you know, I've been a volunteer on boards, or, you know, signing up to volunteer for events, or a plethora, you know, and I think we all enter into these agreements, or, you know, we have the best intentions when we sign up to be a volunteer, and then life gets in the way. And when you, as a person who has a paying job, and maybe you have kids, and, you know, you have a partner, or you have family, what, you know, whatever the case may be, whenever pressure starts to bubble up, the thing that is going to get pressed out is the thing that has the least, you know, consequence for not doing, right? I mean, it's just basic. So I'm suggesting these ideas to create a little more accountability for volunteers, so that your project isn't the first thing to go on the to-do list. And it's not to question the commitment of a volunteer, but rather to create an agreement between you and that person who's agreed to help you, so that your project keeps moving forward. And if that person can't live up to that commitment, that they have a clear means of communicating that to you. So you can do that by creating an actual project agreement, and that can be as simple as an email or something you actually both sign. I think it's more important that you just review the details of what your agreement is and sort of make this handshake agreement, because it says to this person, here's what I need, I'm relying upon you, you know, and here's how you can communicate to me if you can't fulfill that need. Also, scheduling check-ins. I think this is related to interns too. You know, not waiting for things to be off the rails before you have that check-in. So whatever a reasonable regular check-in cadence is, and just cancel it if you don't need the time. You feel like everything's cool, great. But if not, then, or even if things, it's just helpful to talk through things. It doesn't have to mean that things are not going well. It just helps things go better. The other thing is asking for work samples. This wasn't exactly a volunteer situation, but I was in a situation where I was working for somebody who was trying to create a multimedia experience, and somebody who had been like a show operator was really excited about creating this 3D animated thing, and it was supposed to be, you know, 25 minutes long, you know, school groups come see this show, whole thing. Well, months and months of work and effort, and the big reveal day came, and this person excitedly showed their work, which was intended to be sort of like a space experience, you know, shuttle launch, exciting explosions. And this person had very carefully animated a single paper airplane going in a slow circle around the room. And we had, you know, maybe 6 more weeks to finish the other like 28 minutes and 30 seconds or whatever of the show. And so in this instance, it is not that person's fault. They were excited, they wanted to help, but you know, there was not enough oversight, so those check-ins were not in place, and this person didn't really have the chops to do the job, this deadline-driven job, and nobody really knew because there hadn't been that sort of check-in on what kind of work have you done before that would tell me that you can do this work. So especially when deadlines are involved, ask for work samples. And then the last one is, you know, pay when you can. And you can't always, but if you can, even if it's a small honorarium, consider doing that, because as the first bullet here, creating that agreement, having that actual payment functions in exactly the same way. You know, that person realizes this is an important project for you, and your financial commitment is in exchange for their time commitment. So, all right. The next step, once you have your team, is building a project plan. So the first part of building a successful web project plan is creating goals. And we'll talk through that in a little more detail in a minute. Also, having a flexible timeline. So I'll talk through that in some detail as well. Creating solid technical requirements is really important, even if you might feel intimidated by that process. It's easy to begin, and I've created a resource that can help you begin as well. And then setting a project check-in cadence. So even if you're going to build this whole thing, you're going to write all the content, you're going to install WordPress, you're going to migrate it all, putting time on your own calendar to check in and say, how's it going? Am I on schedule? Do I need to, fit in more time, less time? It's probably never less time if we're being real, right? That self check-in matters too. And if you're working with a team, then it matters even that much more, because it will affect everyone on the team. So in the third technical workshop, I'll be talking about project management and working with technical resources and some of those things, about kind of the nitty-gritty of being in the midst of it. And I'll talk more about this particular point then. So when you're starting with your goals, there are 4 types of goals that I would suggest that you create for the project. And the first one is a really clear purpose statement. Why are you doing it? And there are so many reasons why. They come from, we need to solve a particular business type problem, like a revenue problem, or we need to provide better audience engagement or better access to our content. We have something new that we're releasing. It could be a technology problem. Some piece of technology is no longer supported. So there are lots of whys, and knowing what yours is will help you later down the road when scope creep starts coming up and you think, ooh, I really want to add on this amazing part of this project, and when you go back to that clear purpose, like, does this shiny, wonderful thing really fit into that why? And if it doesn't, it should go on to a post-launch to-do list, So these goals can be really helpful tools in keeping the project focused. The next category of goals is business objectives, so money, ticket sales, event registration, membership, donations, all those things that you might be transacting online, or you're adding as new things that you're transacting online. Again, make them as specific and quantitative as possible, but also be as realistic as you can be, conservative even in what you want those financial targets to be, because having them will help you determine if you're headed in the right direction, but you don't want them to be so aggressive that the project is deemed a failure because you didn't hit a goal, So just some balance there. Audience engagement metrics are important, and both business objectives and audience engagement metrics, I think, are important no matter what your why is. So no matter why you're doing the project, thinking through how it's going to have an impact on the business aspect of what you do, and also how is it going to have an impact on how you're engaging your audiences, both super important. So how will you engage the audience that you serve, and what do you need to measure in order to know if you're successful? And then finally, describe what success looks like once this project is done. And you can do it, 3 months, 6 months, a year out. You can do just a year out. But having some idea of, when you look back on this project, what is it about this project that's going to make you say, yeah, we did it? and document that, because that's sort of the North Star then that everybody is working toward. And having that document that you can refer back to is nice when you get there. It's a way to celebrate getting there. So I created a goal setting worksheet that has one of these, I'm going to skip ahead for a second, has one of these sort of website goals, Mad Libs in there for you to create that sort of why purpose statement. So, you can, if you want these to be a little different, you can say this website will help an audience with a problem to solve in order to do X, or because we believe Y. Does that make sense? So you really just want this to be a single impactful statement, like an elevator pitch. Like if somebody asked you, why are you doing this website project? This statement is your answer. And when you say it, they say, oh yeah, that makes sense. So that's what the goals worksheet will help you do. I'm going to go back now to these two slides. And I thought it was important just to say a little bit about this, that when you're setting goals, remember that a website is none of these things. And sometimes we get caught up in wanting to make something that is character by character or pixel by pixel perfect and is 100% complete and tells the entire story forever and ever. And people simply do not expect that. And it just is not possible. I would argue it's not possible. Even with an endless amount of resources and time, you will always find something that you want to change, because things are always changing. If you think about the work that you're doing, you're always looking for ways to engage audiences better, to make what you do more relevant. So to think that your website is going to be something that you put in print and it never changes, it just doesn't work like that. And the more that you think about it instead as this living, breathing thing that is always a work in progress, is made as a toolkit for the audiences that you serve, and is about, first and foremost, what they are trying to accomplish when they're engaging with you, the more successful your web project will be, no matter what project that is. If you think about it in this way, it will just always be more relevant. All right, so about that timeline. I'm sure there's a variety of opinions about project management and timeline from the folks that are here with me today, or if you're watching the recording. Timelines, I think for some people are energizing and it gives them a sense of purpose and stuff to do. And for other people, it's absolutely terrifying or demotivating. So I want to encourage you to have an agile-ish mindset about timeline. So, previously in sort of the tech space, waterfall is the predominant method of planning and implementing projects. And what that means, a waterfall method means we spend an enormous amount of time planning. We try and plan for every possible thing that could go wrong, every possible detail. If you've heard that saying, you see the forest instead of the trees, or vice versa. Waterfall is about detailing every single tree that's in the forest, and we're gonna paint and model and know everything about every tree before we plant the forest. And Agile is like, we just need a forest. So we know it's gonna have some trees, we're gonna start building it. And we know that it's gonna change, that the requirements of the project will change as we start to implement it. So we're just going to take it one tree at a time, So I'm advocating a little bit of a blend. I've created a timeline template that gives you a look at if you are doing a small, medium, or large size project, and I've done that just based on page number of pages, about how long each key milestone takes, from kicking things off and creating a site map to building a content plan, getting a design, implementing that design, testing, and launch. So those are the basic parts for building a website or redesigning a website. So within those parts, though, there are a lot of details. And as you go through the project, you're going to learn things that change your plan. And if you have a waterfall mindset and you have done all this planning and you have this perfect timeline that has tons of assignments and, you know, all these deadlines, when something goes wrong, it's like dominoes falling. Everything in your plan and all those deadlines and assignments, you know, could be wiped out, irrelevant. But if you have a more agile mindset, you say, okay, well, I know the project is going to have these steps, and in between, we're going to have some stuff to figure out. And so if you use those milestones as goals, keeping your eye on that forest that you're trying to plant, and be flexible in between, you'll be, I think, a lot more successful. I use my calendar a lot to keep track of all the things I'm doing, not just meetings I have, but I will block on my calendar, you know, on Monday morning or even Sunday night. Here, I'm going to write this here. I'm going to create this plan, you know, so every hour of my day is blocked out with all the things I know I need to accomplish that week. And if something pops up, I have to move something in order to accommodate it. And it gives me a really great sense of how much time do I have? You know, can I take on something new? What do I need to delegate? You know, like all of those things. And the thing I will say about that though, is just like a self-care pause, is to put creative time and rest on your calendar too. I am notoriously bad at that. I like to hustle and do lots of things, and you know, I always have some crazy idea I'm cooking up, and so I forget to rest, and that is no good for your project getting done, or you coming to the end of that project in your best state. The last thing is, before we move on from that, I wanted to mention Trello. I use Trello to great effect to track the different parts of a project. It uses a system called Kanban, which is a tool that Agile technical folks use, which basically is these different lanes. And you have these cards that basically get organized into different states of a project. And you can just drag and drop them. You can reorganize them to reprioritize them. And it's a really great way to keep things organized and visual if you're a visual person. Trello is free. You can create a free account that you can use. You can share the boards you create with other folks if you are working collaboratively with others. But even if it's just you, like I have this consultancy and I work with partners, but I mostly use it for my own time management, project management. Then the last part is learning to be a delightful nag. So if you need things from other people, obviously, you know, figuring out how you're going to address those delays, figuring out what the obstacles might be and how you can proactively address them is always better than waiting for things to be super late and having to have an uncomfortable conversation. I mean, just as an aside, anytime you have to have an uncomfortable conversation, having it as soon as possible makes it the least amount of uncomfortable in my experience. So whether that's with a web developer or a designer or, you know, whatever the case might be, just get it out there. But this tool, Whoop, is also a link that'll be in the resources related to this session. And Whoop stands for Wish, Outcome, Obstacle, Plan. And it was developed as a tool to help people with any goal setting in life. You want to learn a foreign language, you want to become a painter, you want to launch a website, you can use Whoop to accomplish it, because the idea here is every week you're going to look at, okay, what is the progress toward this goal or the wish that I have to achieve? And you're going to anticipate what are the obstacles to that outcome, and then create a plan to overcome it. So if, you know, I am actually a painter. So if I say this week I want to do 3 pieces, or I want to make progress on 3 pieces, I know that my obstacle is always going to be a perception of not enough time. So I have to build a plan for how am I going to, when I encounter that obstacle, how am I going to overcome it? So Whoop has an app you can download. There's some tools online. It's cool. It's fun. Use it to do anything awesome you're trying to do. Okay, requirements. So a funny note, I knew this quote, and I was pretty sure Benjamin Franklin said it, and I thought, ooh, if I get this wrong, this is the group of people who's going to know. So I looked it up to be sure. But it is the truth in this case that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So when I was talking about, waterfall versus agile and having a really clear picture of every tree, you don't need a really clear picture of every tree, but if you create this requirements document, you will have a better understanding of what trees you need to be able to see better. And as you start thinking about the project, why you're doing it, what your goals are, that will tell you what the components of your project are, So if, for example, you're making your collection available online for the first time, well, documenting what system are you using to do that, what website technology do you have, that'll start to unlock new questions. And you might need help answering them, but until you understand what it is that you're trying to accomplish and you actually write that down somewhere, it's all just a vague forest. It's like, I can see there is a forest, but I'm not really sure what it looks like, right? So I created a project requirements checklist that has general list of different types of components your web project could possibly have. So you can go through there, delete stuff that's not relevant, add stuff that might not be there that you need, and then start adding the detail that you know. And as the project goes along, new details will emerge. But as you go through this exercise, which probably will only take you an hour to do, you'll suddenly have a lot more awareness of where the holes are in what you know, what you have access to, what you need. So these are the main parts that you need to figure out. The technology you're actually using or that you prefer to use for the project. If you don't have a requirement, that's okay too. If you're open to considering options, you just have to find someone who can help you evaluate those options. Third-party tools, I made a list of the types of them in this requirements checklist. So it could be, what are you using to send email? Do you use Google Analytics or something like that? Are you taking donations online from PayPal or from something more complicated? Do you have ticketing? Just all those things that you might be using third-party systems to do. And then on the content side, what are all of the different types of content that you wish to have as a part of this website project? And that could include the things that are listed here, like photo galleries and video players, but also things like, I don't know, do you need recipe cards? Do you need to be able to look at an object in 360 degrees? Do you have virtual tours? There could be lots and lots of things. There are lots of tools out there. So making even a wish list of what you want to see will help you get there. And then measurement. Start with the goals worksheet and look at the goals that you identified at the front end of the project, and then figure out what you need to measure in order to know if you hit them, and include that in your requirements document. So once you create this overview of the project, you can use it to work with potential team members, to figure out if people have skills that you need. You also can use it to kind of build that project plan, that timeline, by figuring out what tasks are going to go into the various phases of the project. So these tools kind of all work together. And I think that you could do all of them in like a planning week, like a sprint week. If you really wanted to like get your project off the ground and to a really running start, it's a nice way to create a lot of momentum to do that. Or you can do it more gradually, especially if you're a team of one. If you want to do it more gradually, you can put these on your calendar, like every Monday afternoon, I'm going to work on one of these parts, for example. And either way, you're going to end up with a really great understanding of where you need to go in order to do what it is that you're trying to do. 2 controversial ideas, and then we'll have questions. So some people absolutely disagree with me, but I'm throwing them out there because I think they're both so helpful. If you have a budget and you're trying to hire out work for any part of your web project, be willing to disclose that budget, even if it's a range or a not to exceed number, because it will make sure that you're sitting at the table with somebody who can do what you need for the budget that you have. And it will save you so much time and headache. And similarly, RFPs are kind of dying on our side of the industry, right? Like the people who are building technology or creating design, less and less want to respond to them because, often it feels like, oh, I'm just a bid. I'm a bid in this process. But you need competing bids for all kinds of reasons. You want to make sure you're making a good investment. You want to make sure that, you're not overpaying for what it is you're getting. But instead of going through a more formal RFP process where you send out an RFP and you just wait to see what comes back, instead consider looking around in your community or regionally or online, however you want the selection process to be. I would recommend asking people who they work with. That's awesome. I think that's the best way to really find a good fit. But find those partners that you want to work with and ask them to bid, because, and I know this isn't always possible, that there might be regulatory reasons or accessibility reasons. There might be lots of reasons why you want to send something out more broadly. But I think if you want to have really good conversations with people who can find creative solutions to do what you need to do for the budget you have, making sure that you reach out and kind of pick people who can do that is going to give you a better result. So that's my soapbox on that. In the 3rd session, I will talk a lot more about managing the project, choosing technical partners, and I'll create a technical partner interview sheet. That's one of the things that's on my to-do list for that session. So, all right, I know I'm a little bit over, and I want to be able to get to all of your questions. So there's lots of ways to connect with me. I'm lucky in that my name is Despy. So if you Google me, you'll probably find me. So you can find me in all these places. My digital studio, you can find me obviously online as well. And then there are all these ways to keep in touch with the Museum Learning Hub and connect with them on social as well. So I'm going to turn it over to Zinnia to facilitate Q&A.
Thank you.
Stop sharing that.
That was great. I was taking notes through the entire session. As we've talked about, I'm also your target audience as the director of an organization that has a website. That I'm still relatively new to this position, and I don't feel like our website has ever really been anybody's baby. And so it's, kind of an ongoing process. So we do have some questions. Some of them may be mine that I put in there as well. But so I'll start with the attendee questions first.
All right.
as you have advised nonprofits on the development of their websites, what have you suggested they prioritize?
That's a great question. I think it would really depend on what the goal is. So if you are trying to raise money, obviously you want to prioritize the things that do that well. If the project is more, mission centered and you're trying to, create great content to engage your audience, like it's a different set of priorities. So I would go back to that big why statement, and then I would prioritize my work to be, what are the aspects of this project that will best embody that why statement.
Okay, that's great advice. One of the things I wrote down was a virtual front door. I mean, it's really, I think that's just a very practical, helpful way to frame who's coming to our websites and what they need, and really thinking about what do they need, the people visiting. So kind of along those lines, what should we keep in mind about outreach efforts as we plan our website? Are there particular website elements needed to ensure that a website and marketing efforts are coordinated?
That is a great question. I think that, I feel like I could teach a whole other session, or maybe like 3 more sessions on that topic. It's a hard one to answer. Definitely measurement. So when you think about what those goals are, both for audience engagement and for those business objectives, working with marketing in order to make sure that you're measuring what you need to measure to make sure that the investment that you're making in marketing is worthwhile. And there are so many ways to do that, whether that's using a Facebook tracking pixel in the background, or using a URL structure like a UTM. Google has a great UTM builder. So if you use Google Analytics, you can basically build these custom URLs that will track, where did this hit come from? Was it a paid campaign or a print ad or a Facebook ad or whatever the case might be? Was it a partner who shared this link? And those types of simple tracking can really help with efficacy. In terms of making sure that your website is serving your audience from a marketing perspective, I think the best thing to do is just make it extraordinarily user-friendly, and especially on mobile, because people are going to be making decisions about, how am I going to spend my day? Can we go here? What are the hours? Where do I park? Do I have to pay? They're going to be wanting to answer all those questions like instantly. And so no amount of awesome marketing will make up for bad user experience in that really key visit information on your website. So I know it seems like not exactly marketing, but I think it's the most important thing marketing can care about, because, if you're out there, if you're spending money on ad spend, or you are promoting your museum in any capacity, email, whatever, and then people come to your website and they can't figure out what your hours are, dead in the water.
That is so true as a user of many websites, and especially when you're traveling and you just want that information. So that's a good way to think about it, is what is the quick information that people might need right away in the palm of their hand.
Yeah.
So that sort of aligns with the next question in a flipped way, but what are some common website project pitfalls?
I think I'll talk about this in the second the content workshop a lot. I think one of the biggest pitfalls is waiting too late to start content planning. A lot of people are excited about design, and they go from having a plan to a design phase. And then the content is like fit into the design rather than vice versa. And I think museums especially have such a content forward existence, so thinking about what is the content of this website, and how are we best going to showcase it, allows the design process to be informed by all the cool stuff that there is to see and do and experience, rather than, I think sometimes in the content process, you just discover, oh my gosh, we need this thing that we didn't even know we needed. And if you do that up front, it will keep your project on track better. Also, having really great check-in with whatever technical resource is building your site, because I feel like that's the other place where things go off the rails is, there's like a big push for content and getting everything together. And then it's sort of like, okay, person who's doing this build, here's all this stuff. And then they have a deadline that could be weeks out. And, if there's not a really good check-in agreement, then things could definitely be delayed. And I think as a project manager myself, and in these cases too, it's just a good idea to have a really regular conversation with that resource.
Well, and I love that idea too of kind of understanding everybody's roles within the website development, so that helps to keep the timelines realistic, because once your part is done, it's, oh, I'm going to dump all the content now into the technologist who's like, whoa, let's go back to that realistic timeline.
Yeah.
And just understanding how long it takes to keep things on track. So that was really great advice. So we're nearing the end, but this one was sort of, I alluded to this earlier when we were just chatting, but the checklists and kind of that process that you were talking through, does that apply to dealing with an existing website in terms of kind of like starting a project in the middle? Like you just need to refresh it, or it's not really an entire build of a website. Like, is the approach the same no matter where you start?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think so, with some caveats, right? I think it's easier and harder to say, okay, we're just going to redesign this thing. So we're going to overhaul it behind the scenes, and then we're just going to swap them out. That has its challenges and its benefits. And, when you're working on something that is in full view of your audience, that has, benefits and challenges too. But largely the same. I think the main difference, and I'll get into this a little bit next time, is what is the minimum viable product, MVP? This is like a software idea that when you're building a piece of software, your goal should be, what is the minimally useful thing that you can produce that your audience can get value from? And when you think about it that way, it makes these projects easier to tackle, especially if you're adding on or revising an existing piece of technology, because you can take that part that's not working and think, okay, what do I need to do to make this more workable? I can still look at it from this team approach and creating timeline and creating the requirements for it. But you can also think about it in phases of development too. So what do I need to do to make it better is a different question than what do I need to do to replace it? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, absolutely.
Like I said, I'll talk a lot about that next time, because I think we all, even if you're redesigning something, there's still that whole notion of how can I make it better? Maybe I want it to be this spectacularly awesome thing, but getting there in a more iterative way might be more realistic,
Yeah, I will be listening next week as well. So final question for you for today. How do you best plan for changes to content? And this user said we find change necessary constantly.
Yeah. So one of the ways I think is if you have the ability to Well, I have different answers depending on your technology situation. So if you are in a situation where you're building a new website or you're redesigning a site and you have the ability to create um, a more modular design, that will help you tremendously. So there are lots of sort of drag and drop WordPress tools, other content management tools that allow you to be much more flexible about how your pages lay out, and you can build custom pages and, with the same tool set, with the same design elements. That's great. But if you have a website where that is not really possible and you're not in that position, then I think it really has more to do with how can you work with what you have. And often that means you, at the minimum, probably have the ability to make copy changes, image changes. Maybe you can embed YouTube video. And you can do a lot, actually, with those elements to tell different stories, to make your content relevant to the moment. So without knowing a little more about the context of your question, it's hard to answer the specifics. But I think having, if it's possible, a single point of contact where a single person who's making those changes, really great. As long as that person doesn't become a bottleneck. But when you're thinking about all the different things that might need to happen in order to maintain a website, lots of people can have ideas about how to change it. And if all those people have the ability to, you're suddenly going to have this spider web effect, So yeah, I'll talk more about that in the content session for sure, managing content and planning for that.
Okay, well, wonderful. Well, this was a great session, and we very much thank you for your time and are looking forward to seeing you again next week. So I'm just going to close us out and say thank you to all of you for attending today's session on managing website projects. And again, Despy, a huge thanks for sharing your technical experience with website development and management. We'll look forward to more. So just a few final reminders. Don't forget to visit the forum on our website to ask any questions related to this presentation or additional tech questions. As always, follow the Museum Learning Hub on social media. And finally, please join us for the second technical training workshop for Module 4. This one's going to focus on methods to streamline content planning with helpful tracking tools, ways to identify content gaps and find creative ways to fill them. And we'll also explore innovative ways to tell stories online without breaking the budget. This session will once again be taught by Despy Mays. Again, she's the founder and lead strategist of Bluebird out of Indianapolis, Indiana. And I've enjoyed being today's host. And Despy, thank you again. Have a great day. Bye.